All right. A lot of people ask what's the real differences between being a clinical specialist and being a sales rep, both in the medical device space. Well, they're, first off, I'm going to talk in some generalities, right? And they are both very similar and also very different. So, some of the ways that they're the same first is both clinical specialists and territory managers or sales representatives are both expected to cover cases. They're both expected to be excellent clinicians, excellent during cases, being really good at troubleshooting, reading the room, understanding what the physician needs before they need it, and provide expertise when it's needed in the operating room. Now, sometimes clinicals are have more experience because they're generally covering more cases, or maybe they have a unique clinical background specifically to the type of procedure that's being done, and therefore they would have some extra level of expertise or knowledge that would be very beneficial for the physician that's running the case during the case. The other ways they're the same is generally they get the same corporate training. They go through the same annual review process. Everything from a corporate standpoint is treated exactly the same, right? So ongoing learning modules, national sales meetings, all of those things, both groups are expected to attend. Now, the differences are also big and small, depending on how you look at them. A lot of times, clinical people who want to move into a sales role will often come back and say, "Well, I'm doing everything that they're doing," and in some cases, that may be a pretty accurate description. In most cases, however, it's not. And I'll tell you the biggest thing that's the difference between the two is something that you might not have thought about, and that is that the salesperson wakes up in the morning, goes to sleep at night, goes on vacation over the weekend. They always have a sales number on their head, they have a quota on their head. They can never escape it, even when they're on vacation. It doesn't matter. I was a clinical for 2.5 years. I was a sales rep for 17 years, and then I went into the corporate office. And I can tell you that the transition out of the field, having a number on my head, and into the corporate office, I've never had so much fun on a vacation as I did my first year in the corporate office because I didn't have a specific number over my head, and that's exactly what it's like to be a clinical versus being in sales. And not only do you have the pressure of the the number itself, but you also have the thought processes that are going through your head of how do I hit the number? How do I make sure cases don't fall off? How do I make sure that patients are continued to be added to the top of the funnel? How do I continue to educate enough patients and enough physicians every month to keep what's already going and to add more to it? So those are the main things. There's also a little bit different type of person that might be interested in one job or the other. Some people don't appreciate having a quote on their head at all. No, they just don't want that as part of their day-to-day job. And for those type people, pushing them into sales is a disaster. I've seen it happen before. They don't like the selling component. They've always liked the clinical component of the job, and they think, "Oh, I can do this." Or what also happens a lot of times is their sales rep will leave for whatever reason. Maybe they get promoted, maybe they move out of the organization, and you've got a clinical specialist sitting in that territory that's been there for 4 or 5 years that already knows everybody. A manager will look at that and think, okay, I'm going to promote them into this role. and that person's never had training in selling. They don't even know if they like selling. Um, and those prove to be long-term disasters also. The uh, the short term though is a little bit different because if there's a set group of business or a set uh, amount of business in a certain territory, say a couple $1 million, the CS is already covering. They're capable of covering a couple $1 million in business. Then it's very likely that those people could move into that role and maintain what they have. The problem comes when they're trying to grow it, and I've seen that happen quite a few times. I'm not saying anything's impossible; it's not, but that's one of the things that might have a personality difference. The other things are more likely around how aggressive somebody is, how neurotic they might be, and I talk about neurotic from a big five personality standpoint. If someone is highly negatively um, reactive to bad situations around them, they may not enjoy selling because selling is mostly people telling you no. And some people just they don't like that. They're high in negative emotion. And a lot of really good salespeople on a scale of 1 to 100 in neuroticism, they might score a 5 out of 100. And I've seen that over and over again. I rarely see people that are on the high side, and by that I mean over maybe 60 in trait neuroticism that enjoy going out and getting told no all the time. That's not generally something that people like. I've seen outgoing folks both in sales and in as a clinical specialist. I don't think there's anything that's radically different in that. And in my mind, I'm going through the big five personality traits as I talk through this. Openness, I also see in both. I think um, that's probably a little bit higher, typically in a salesperson, more high in trait openness and willing to try new things, willing to step outside of the box than I might in a pure clinical person. Those are probably the big differences that I can come up with just off the top of my head walking through this. And but the reality is I've actually done both and been successful at both. And I loved being a clinical specialist. It was one of the most fun jobs that I've ever had. I enjoyed showing up to clinic. I enjoyed having 20 patients there just to see me, and I enjoyed speaking with them and working with them and problem solving. So you can absolutely do either one you want to, but you have to have a reason to do it. The primary reason for me not to be a clinical is I have 3 kids and a wife, and money was more of a value to me than filling my cup, necessarily doing patient follow-ups. But that's just me. Your mileage may differ for sure, and there's no reason why anyone should hold you back for one thing or the other.